and welcome to Let's Talk Poultry. My name is Rebecca Tierney and I'm the Poultry Advisor with Teagasc. I'm hoping you can all hear me okay, as I'm experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty today. But I'm here today to deliver this webinar series to offer up-to-date information on a wide range of topics. So all of this series and previous webinar series that we have done are recorded and are available to view on the Teagasc website or our YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by Conor Sheehy, again, to talk to us on foot pad dermatitis. Conor's going to discuss how foot pad dermatitis occurs, how to manage it, and why it's important in terms of animal welfare. He's going to delve into a couple of other animal welfare topics that are forthcoming in the industry. Then on August 25th, I'm going to be joined by Carla Gomez from Animal Health Ireland, who's going to speak to us in relation to the biosecurity audits being offered by Animal Health Ireland, free to all poultry producers, something that everybody should take advantage of so we can improve and be ready for the forthcoming winter. And as always, I want to draw your attention to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. I'd ask you to submit any questions you have for Conor on the topic of foot pad dermatitis, if it's around animal welfare in relation to a change to slower growing breeds of birds, or even in-house hatching if you have some questions around those. So send those in and we'll answer those at the end. So Conor, I'll ask you to share your screen and we'll kick on with your slides, please. Sorry, Conor, you're just on mute there.
So hello everybody, thanks for the introduction, Rebecca. So yeah, I'm a vet with Teagasc Poultry team in Limerick. So thankfully I've steered clear of the ILT issues and all that, so I haven't any direct experience of that. If any questions, sorry. So today's talk is on foot pad dermatitis or pododermatitis. I'll just call it podo throughout this presentation. Now a lot of my presentation isn't specifically related to podo, it's about animal welfare in general, or chicken broiler welfare in general. The reasons that's because the pododermatitis and animal welfare are largely analogous. Pododermatitis is a tool that's used for monitoring. You monitor pododermatitis levels in the factory, and that's a remote way of monitoring animal welfare on farm. So a lot of this talk will be about just animal welfare, typically about pododermatitis. And generally, if you have good levels of pododermatitis, you'll have good welfare. So what is animal welfare? It's the state of faring well, but it's the ability of an animal to cope with its environment. And coping is sustaining physical and mental fitness. And the environment includes whatever challenges are thrown at the bird. So in terms of pododermatitis, the main and really only significant environmental challenge that causes pododermatitis is wet litter. And but there's other environmental factors will affect welfare of the bird. Other animals in a pecking order, in hens or parasites, disease challenge, they'll all affect welfare. The welfare can vary between very good and very bad. Largely, if you have good production, you'll have good welfare. But that's not strictly true every time. If you have a hen in a cage, which they're not in cages anymore, but caged hens would be considered as having poorer welfare than free-range hens, but free-range birds will not produce as well as a caged bird. So in that case, the bird with better production has poorer welfare, but largely they're exceptions. In most cases, if you have good welfare, you'll have good production. So a lot of the audience here will be poultry farmers. Production might be what your bottom line is, what you're really after. But in order to chase a good bottom line, you are also chasing good welfare. I know that even if the two things weren't related, most people will want to have good welfare. But thankfully, the two things are related, so there's more of an incentive to have good welfare. But welfare, it should be assessed as a more of a holistic measure, incorporating indicators of both positive and negative welfare. So you shouldn't just assess how bad things are, how much pododermatitis you have, how much feather picking you have, how many scratches you have, how much mortality you have. You should be assessing indicators of positive welfare as well. So that's things like how many perches have you? Have you wing flapping, dust bathing, just other normal behaviours that, and if birds are exhibiting those behaviours, they'll be you can say that welfare is good. So why is welfare important? Economics, there's obviously that we said about economics, that if you've good welfare, you'll have good production. You'll have also less need for medication, less need to vet, just reduce incidence of normal behaviours, which can bring on scratching and other issues. So yeah, definitely welfare is important for production, and yeah, you've also legal responsibilities. So the Animal Health and Welfare Act of 2013 is really the all-encompassing act governing animal welfare, and this doesn't just cover broilers or layers; it's all species, and it's more of a proactive act than a reactive. It's not a list of do's and don'ts. So there's no specific legislation on how you must grow a layer or a broiler under this act, but if your birds are found to be suffering, a trained welfare officer may come and do an audit, and he will be he'll be referring to the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, and he may assess that your welfare is poor. And if you're not, there is codes of practices in all the chicken species, and they're not law. But if that welfare officer does deem the welfare to be poor in your birds, he'll ask why are you not following the code of practice, and that can be held against you. Like there is a problem. So if you're not following the code of practice, why aren't you following it? Now, if everything is very good on your farm and you're not following code of practice, that's not an issue. It's an issue if you're not following best practice, if you have a problem. So everyone should be familiar with the code of practices in different species, and they're available online. And yeah, so but then the Broiler Welfare Directive, unlike the Animal Health and Welfare Act, this is a list of do's and don'ts. It's specifically related to broilers. So the do's are: you have to have specific light intensity and photo period. You have to have specific air quality. It's less than 3,000 ppm of CO2, less than 20 ammonia. There has to be specific space allowances, so 39 kilos per metre squared is the most common one in this country. And under the Broiler Welfare Directive, there also has to be monitoring at the slaughterhouse. So the mortality records are examined at the slaughterhouse. So if your mortality goes above certain levels, that's all written down on your food chain information docket. That's monitored by the department, and if it goes above certain levels, they'll expect to see a post-mortem or a veterinary report saying why it's happened. Is there a welfare issue? And if it's not a welfare issue and it's being closed out by post-mortem report, fine. But they do need to see those records. And the other monitoring is the foot pad quality of pododermatitis. So it's a legislative requirement the department have to follow. We are obliged under the Broiler Welfare Directive, the EU law, to monitor pododermatitis at processing, and that's being done. And so other reasons why I'll come back to the Broiler Welfare Directive. That's other reasons why welfare is important, as you have an ethical responsibility to these birds. So a lot of people would not consider broilers in particular to be the brightest animals in the world. And how much of a duty of care do you owe them? Well, it's not a question of can they talk or can they think, it's can they suffer. And our animals, our birds, they mightn't be very, very, very intelligent in your opinion, but they can definitely suffer to the same extent as anyone else. So you do owe them a duty of care. There's 3 essentials of stockmanship. You have knowledge of animal husbandry, skills in animal husbandry, and personal qualities. So a talk like this supposedly will give you knowledge, skills. You might pick them up from your father or whoever else you're learning from. But really, it's their personal qualities is what it comes down to. If you've got affinity and empathy with animals, dedication and patience, you will look after these birds to the best of your ability, regardless of if you're making money out of them or if you what else is going on in your life. And I'm proud to say everyone I deal with has those personal qualities. Sometimes older houses and tight margins will get in the way. You might want to do, you know what you need to do, you might want to do it, but it's just, you just don't have the money. And there's also lack of control over all your inputs. So things can, occasionally welfare can suffer with the best will in the world. But I know that anyone I deal with, they want it to be better. They'll do everything they can to make it better. And it's often just a temporary issue which is solved. Customer concern is another major reason welfare is important, and it's one of the main drivers of animal welfare. So yes, there is the Broiler Welfare Directive, Animal Health and Welfare Act, but the standards of welfare that are required by many of the customers now greatly exceed the standards of the Broiler Welfare Act, Broiler Welfare. Some of the customers are looking for lower stocking density, slower growing birds just as standard. Marks and Spencers and Waitrose in the UK are gone that way, and that's probably a trend that we are moving towards. In terms of Pododermatitis, the different retailers they want to see reports. They want to see regular reporting of the Podo levels from the factory. So the department are not the only ones monitoring Podo. The retailers are also looking for it. Is this a marketing thing, or are they just wanting not to be associated with negative press? Possibly a bit of both. And if they are associated with negative press, they want to be able to say that, look, we put these standards in place, and what more can we do? They do go out and audit them, but they can't be on every farm at all times. Animal health, animal welfare rights organisations are also stakeholders in the animal welfare discussion. Some of the groups, you really couldn't grow a chicken to their requirements. Even organic chicken mightn't even be up to what they'd actually really want. The Chickens Liberation Organisation would be one of those, but a lot of these, the Humane Slaughter Association, what they want is not unreasonable, and they've been around for maybe 100 years, and everything they've asked for has come to pass and become standard practice. And yeah, a lot of what they're asking for now is probably what it's not exactly standard practice now, but it's definitely the way things will go. So I mentioned the 5 freedoms there a while ago, and that's the template that a trained auditor will use to assess your welfare. So it's freedom from thirst, hunger and malnutrition, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury and disease, freedom from fear and distress, and freedom to express normal behaviours. So as I said earlier on, it's not just the negatives that a welfare auditor will assess. He also wants to see the positives. So it's the freedom to express normal behaviours. Our birds, they don't look like they did in the jungle fowl, however many thousands of years ago when they're first domesticated. But if these birds have in trials been released into the wild, and you might have to help them survive for a generation or two, but within 2 or 3, 4 generations, they do start to look more like these birds in the wild, and they also have all the same instincts. So these birds, our broilers, our layers, they mightn't look like these birds, but they still have all the same instincts. They still have those same drives to spend a lot of their time foraging, to have the same social structures. And it's up to us to put an environment in place where they can have those normal behaviours. If we don't have normal behaviours, you get, and there's a drive in the bird to have those normal behaviours, you get abnormal behaviours, which might be feather picking, cannibalism, just things you don't want to be seeing. So yeah, normal behaviors are very important. Things like dust bathing is another normal behavior, which is it's very important in layers and older birds for feather health. But it's also an indicator that birds are in a nice environment. They only do it if litter is very good. And you will see it, you do see it in some broiler houses, but some broiler houses might never see dust bathing because it never gets quite good enough. You mightn't have pododermatitis in that broiler house, but you really need excellent litter to get dust bathing. Freedom from disease is one of the 5 freedoms, as I said. Look, I suppose in my little paradise in West Limerick, we don't get many issues caused by primary pathogens like ILT or avian influenza, but we do still get a lot of dysbacteriosis and poor gut health. They're not caused by a primary pathogen, one bug coming in. It's other issues. It might be feed, it might be ventilation failures, it might be heating failures, but it's not a bug per se that causes dysbacteriosis. I think we've done a talk on biosecurity, so we don't need to talk too much about that. Freedom from pain and injury is, so pododermatitis is a cause of pain. Other causes of pain: scratches, pecking. TD, osteomyelitis, I suppose you're getting into the realm of disease there, but it manifests as pain and injury. But anyway, what is pododermatitis? Just to focus on the main topic today. It's caused by wet and sticky litter. I say it's the major cause in that slide, but really it's the only cause of pododermatitis. If you have good litter, you just don't get pododermatitis. So in any pododermatitis investigation, you're not investigating why did you get podo, you're investigating why have you wet litter. Broilers spend their entire life in contact with the litter, and yeah, if the litter is poor, you'll always get podo. So there's, in the department, it's scored from 0, 1 and 2. So score 0 is clearly lack of any lesion. Score 1 is a mild lesion, and score 2 is a more severe lesion. It's more ulcerating. That's painful. If you go above 40% score 2, that is put on a file, and you will be, the more of those you get, you are very likely to trigger a welfare inspection. Anyone may get an occasional batch. So if you do 7 batches in a year and there's 2 loads go out of every house and you have 3 or 4 houses, you might get the occasional load that has above 40% podo. Oh, it's only 100 birds are scored. If that 100 birds came from a bad one corner of one house where you do have a problem, yeah, you might get a podo report. But it's when you start getting these things routinely, it becomes more of an issue. That you can be forgiven for the occasional one, but you won't be forgiven for routinely going above that score, 40% score 2. So all birds, in the Broiler Welfare Directive, all birds must have access to dry, friable litter. As well as it facilitates dust bathing, as well as protecting footpads, and you'll just get better performance. But if you are unlucky enough to get a welfare audit due to having high podo levels, it's a lot easier not to be on that list than to get off it. So it's if you get a welfare inspection, it's because there is something it's fact that you've had you're repeatedly gone above 40% podo level. So you have issues, and now the auditor that comes out might want to. Now your head is above the parapet, and now that auditor may want to see a level that's actually more difficult for you to reach than just staying above that 40%. You might want to see that dust bathing. You might want to see more normal behaviours, and it's going to be very difficult to. If it's a lot easier to stay below 40% than it is to see dust bathing and other normal behaviours. So Podo starts as initially a dirty mark and a thickening of the skin or foot pad. And ulcers then develop with the increasing severity of the case. If a bird first get exposed when it can be damaged more easily. And once the damage happens, regardless of if the litter doesn't get a whole lot worse, the podo will get worse. So even if the litter stays relatively good afterwards, there's a wound there, and that broilers are in contact with the litter. The litter is never good. It mightn't be bad enough to cause a lesion, to cause an erosion, but once the erosion has formed, even if that will get worse. So the longer you can keep your litter good, the better. And if ulcers, they cause pain, reluctance to move, reduced feed and water consumption, reduced weight gain. So as I said, with all welfare issues, they do impact on performance. Podo is the same. So it's not just a thing to keep the department off your back, whatever, that you don't want podo, or you want performance. And ulcers can facilitate more bacterial invasion, leading to further infections, downgrades, reduced profitability. So really, it's a very big issue. It's not just an issue on paper. It's a big issue it's not just an issue that's causing you to get audits and stuff. It's costing you money every day to have this problem. It's not just a nuisance to getting audits and stuff. So as I said, Podo is used as a welfare indicator in most European countries, and I think it's a very sensible indicator. If I was coming up with a metric I was measuring at the factory, Podo is probably the one I would choose. We used to have a level of 70%, and that was the threshold. And if you were above 70%, you got an audit. Well, if you're above 70% routinely, that's now down to 40, and it may go lower. The fact it's gone from when we were at 70, really, if 40 had been the level, there'd have been too many people getting those reports. So 70 was a sensible target at the time, but things have improved, and 40 is now the level. And there is a hope that will be pushed lower. 20 would be the target that well, really, we'd want ideally to be no podo, but as I said, in anyone's house, and then you can get a bad load. But if you do get this welfare audit, and you might trigger reduced stock density or financial penalties. Those penalty. So everyone has to do the monitoring, or the member states. We're all obliged to do the monitoring, but we can decide on our own penalties. So the penalties decide of each member state. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been anyone penalised as yet by the department. But yeah, that can't. Well, as I said, things are improving, so maybe there might never be anyone getting a penalty. So, what are the causes of podo? As you said, the only cause of podo is wet litter. So, what's the cause of wet litter? Your litter management. Yeah, clearly, your light, water supply. So, I'll just touch on a few of those. So, litter management. So that refers to the litter material and litter depth. I prefer thinner layers of litter at the start. You get increased scratching and turning of the litter, improved aeration, so there's more of a drying effect. If you have a deep layer of litter, the moisture will just sink to the bottom, and it will come to the top as the batch goes on. It's not a good litter material isn't just absorbing the moisture and hiding it; it's also releasing that moisture. So if you've a bit of an airstream penetrating the litter, helping it to dry, that's what you need, not a thick layer of litter. It's obviously important. If you do have thin layers of litter at the start, you have to have a high floor temperature to guarantee the welfare of the birds. If you can't guarantee a high floor temperature, minimum 28 degrees or 30, you might be better off just using a thicker layer of litter. But most people, all things being equal, in terms of reducing podo, thinner layer of litter is better at the start. This is just a slide that demonstrates that there I have references for all these if anyone wants them. That if you have a lower, so the green is good. The top has a thicker layer of litter than the bottom, so the top has less green than the bottom. Litter material also has a major impact. Straw to me this is home chopped straw, not a finely ground straw. That to me is a litter material of the past, and I wouldn't have it on any farm. Wood shavings is much better. Dry wood shavings, nice, fluffier the better. Again, you've more green with wood shavings than straw. This is a bit of work I did myself. That was a master's I did on pododermatitis, and I suppose that's this slide is the main output of that master's. That so chopped straw at the highest level of pododermatitis, straw chip. So that's a milled straw. It's smaller particles than the chopped straw, but it's not particularly small particles. And wood shavings, they're all largely similar. In this study, I think the chopped straw was only in use in 1 or 2 farms, and they were getting away with it, but they had fairly good controls over the rest of their environment. Most people, they would have even worse levels of podo if they had chopped straw. But the main thing to come out of this study was that straw crumb was the best bedding material in use at this time. I think wood crumb is becoming popular now, and that's also an excellent bedding material. So straw crumb has the same basic, it's made from the same stuff as straw chip or chopped straw, but why is it better? It's because it's the smaller particle size. The smaller particle size has better absorbency and just stays drier for longer. The straw crumb there can be some negatives to it. I find it a very good bedding material, but in some houses, it can be very good up to 15, 20 days. And then you go in and it's just slop, and it's you'll regret ever using it. So I suppose it can make a good house better, but it can make a bad house worse. It's very good at absorbing, but it's not very good at releasing moisture. So everything it absorbs, it reaches saturation point, and then at that time it can't absorb anymore, and your house goes off very quickly. But in houses where it is working, it's excellent bedding material. If I was to say there's one bedding material that's better, I'd probably say peat. So straw crumb, it's very good at absorbing moisture, but it's not very good at releasing it. Peat is probably the best at both absorbing and releasing moisture. Now, peat is not very good from a sustainability, environmental point of view, and probably not a bedding material of the future, but it is a good bedding material, for it absorbs and releases moisture. But water pressure has a big impact on podo. So if your pressure is too high, you will have pododermatitis. Birds can only drink at a certain rate. If your pressure is too high, as they press the nipples, more water will come out than they can keep up with, and that will enter the bed. You think that it'll be caught by the drip cups, but if there is slow motion video cameras that you can do of this kind of stuff, and a lot of it is not caught by the drinkers. Drinker height definitely has an impact. Birds can't, they can only swallow by gravity. So if you look at a chicken in the wild, or birds drinking out of a puddle, they have to lift their heads to drink, and while lifting that head, some water could escape. So it's better off if their head is up as high as possible before they start to drink the water, because it just helps the swallow to flow down better, easier. They're less likely to play with it as well if those drinkers are as high as they can be. Now, the birds shouldn't have to they should, their heels should never leave the ground in order to get to that drinker, but they should have to reach as high as they can without stretching. You know, they shouldn't have to go onto their toes to get to the drinker, but they should have to definitely lift their body, maybe only be able to be comfortable giving 3 taps of the drinker, of the nipple, and then coming back down. Drinkers, you can have a lot of issues in a house causing wet litter. For my money, and it's not my money most of the time, but if it was my money, the first thing I would address is often the drinkers. Drinkers have a lifespan of 7 years, and once it goes, most drinkers have the manufacturer's recommended lifespan of 7 years. Once it goes above that, they're getting less. There is more water escaping with each tap of the nipple, and there is water entering the litter. There's water escaping even when birds aren't tapping the nipple, they're just leaking. So to me, if I have a problem house, the first thing I'd be assessing is the drinkers, and often we'll be recommending changing them. Other factors, stock density, definitely. If you have a high stock density, you're more likely to have wet litter. There's just more pressure on the house, more birds drinking, more birds defecating. It's not difficult to understand that. Lights, fluorescent lights can, if birds that might want to sit under them, and you can often get a patch of wet litter under fluorescent lights. Ventilation, clearly, if there's always moisture entering the house, it needs to be leaving. If you don't have a good ventilation pattern, you will get wet litter. So you need ventilation from the start. Your heating system definitely has an impact. It's not to be all and end all. So some people think that a dry heating system is the solution to all wet litter issues. It's not. If you have a gas burner, so if you burn 1,000 litres of gas for a 20,000 bird house, that's 2,000 litres of water entering. During that, and most of that will enter at a time where you're actually, sometimes the birds aren't even in the house, so you're trying, and you're just preheating, and or else the birds are very young, and the humidity can often be too low if you have a dry heating system. So having a gas system, you're bringing up that humidity to a level that the birds like. So, but you have 2,000 litres of water entering the house. A lot of that will be in the first few days when it's actually desirable. Versus for the same 20,000 birds, you might have 60,000 litres of water enters through the drinking system. So a lot of that would leave as chicken flesh, but a lot of that needs to be removed by your ventilation system. So yeah, a dry heating system isn't to me, it's not the be all and end all. To me, a good ventilation system is better, is equally important, and definitely drinkers efficient, not leaking is key. You can get diseases, coccidiosis, IB, that cause wet litter. I know Callum covered coccidiosis, and yeah. Feed is another major thing which causes wet litter. So it's difficult to guarantee. It's difficult for any of the mills, the integrator you're involved with, to always guarantee the feed. This feed comes in big boats from overseas. If it's not up to scratch, there isn't another boat coming in the next day that you can just pick and choose. Once it's there, you kind of has to be eaten. So if that soya isn't, if the level of non-starch polysaccharides is too high, leading to increased viscosity, poor digestibility, wet droppings, you are likely to get wet litter and everybody within your group is likely to have the same problem at that time. And yeah, that's just unfortunate. And until that soya is gone, that's just the way it's going to be. Same way if you're on maize and there's mycotoxins, or any feed and there's mycotoxins, yeah, you can put in binders, but they help to a certain extent. But until that feed is until that load, that ship is eaten, everybody's going to have a problem. So yeah, like there will always be levels of pododermatitis, and there'll always be some wet litter, and it's not always within. Not every factor is within the farmer's control. So just yeah, but I think we've had times where everyone within a certain group has issues, and yeah, the department have been fairly understanding that yeah, this is just a problem there at the time. It's not an individual farm problem. You can do things to mitigate it, and some people are more successful than others. But yeah, anyway, this is just to say there's a minimum ventilation rate, and it starts from day one. Getting towards the end there, there's reasons to be hopeful in terms of pododermatitis. As I said, things are improving. So we've gone, like the threshold has come down, and it may come down further, but it's not. It's because we're able to bring it down further. The levels, the average level is reducing. So it's okay. You might be the grower might feel like he's racing just to stand still, like that he's the more he improves, the harder the target gets. But yeah, I think myself that the 70 was a very, very generous target, and maybe the 40 is. I do think that we will be able to reduce that target. The breed companies, so Ross and Cobb, there is a much greater emphasis on robustness of these birds. So I suppose if you go back 20 years, it was all about FCR and growth rate. And if you had a problem, you just gave them antibiotics. Those days are gone. There is very little antibiotics used in the poultry sector. But the robustness of the bird has improved. So roughly 30% of their metric that they use for selection is based on conditions, and whichever bird grows the best is selected. But they also grow some the brothers and sisters of that pedigree bird. So it's also a pedigree bird under normal conditions, and actually quite bad conditions, and they see which survives the best, which grows the best, which litter stays the best and less disease issues. And the brother or sister of the bird that was grown under that condition, whichever one performs best in the normal house is the brother or sister of that in the pedigree house is then selected for breeding. They are putting a lot of emphasis on robustness now, where they weren't previously. And another reason they didn't have to put such an emphasis on robustness previously is because there was a lot of meat and bone meal in use in the poultry sector, and that was, I think if I talk to my farmers that were at it 20, 30 years, their litter was better. And it was that the meat and bone meal was much more digestible. It didn't have those non-starch polysaccharides issues. And so the robustness wasn't as important. You had a less robust bird, but it wasn't under as much challenge. And so another reason to be hopeful is there is new protein sources are coming on stream. Meat and bone meal won't come back, but insect meal could definitely take a lot of the place of soya. It's a lot more digestible, doesn't have that non-starch polysaccharides issues. So in soya, you get your soya, you think it's a protein source, but like up to 40% is digestible non-starch polysaccharides, and might that maybe more or less, but source, and it's very digestible, and the birds do like it, and it's just gone for it's just under consideration and by Europe right now. And it will be approved. There's no doubt about it. How big a part of diet could it be? Will it ever be 20% as per soya? I don't know, but if it's cheap, maybe it will. It can be grown from these insects. The soldier fly larvae can be grown from waste, from any food waste. So it could be a very nice circular economy and a lot more sustainable than importing soya from rainforest areas in the long run. Mycotoxins, yeah, it's becoming a lot quicker and cheaper to test for them. It's only a small reason to be hopeful, but if you do have mycotoxins, we can test down for each batch now and address these issues more quickly. In terms of Podo, and I don't want to overstep my brief here by saying it's a reason that everyone might agree with. Very definitely, it reduces your Podo levels, and there is a move towards slow growth. And some countries, well, Holland specifically, you can't walk into a supermarket and pick up the broiler that we have, that we grow at 31-2 days. They're all slow growth birds. They're all different breeds. So slow growth breeds like JA757s, J957s, or Ross Rangers, and that's just what their consumer demands. And yeah, I do think that's the way that the industry will go. I wouldn't be jumping up and down pushing it or promoting it. I just think it will happen anyway. And is it a bad thing for an individual grower? Probably not. If you have a house that's struggling, you're going to have a lower stocking density, a slower growing bird. You'll have less problems. It'll be a big challenge for the industry. You'll need double the amount of housing, and we need to have all that extra. We need to completely change the breeding birds. But this industry has coped in the past with challenges. I think it will cope again. Holland were lucky that they had a big export market, so they were able to just bring all those other houses on stream and stop exporting for a while, and they built back up their housing stock, and now they have an export market again. But for a few years they didn't export a whole lot. They needed every house they could for their own low stocking density. We import more chicken than we export, so we're not in the same position to switch overnight. How it may happen is one retailer at a time, and yeah, we could cope with that. But definitely, if all the retailers start asking for this at one time, that's not something we could cope with. Why did the retailers ask for it all of a sudden? It's because they were getting a lot of bad publicity, and they were getting picketed, and it was a very successful campaign by the animal welfare rights organizations. And I can't see them. They're not going to rest, and they had that very successful campaign. They are going to replicate that in other countries, and this movement will happen. In the European chicken equipment of 2025, a lot of the retailers that we know about in this country, they have signed up to it, and so it is going to happen, whether by 2025 or before. There's other things in that chicken equipment 2025. So it's not you're not committed to a 56-day bird, like as per free range. It doesn't need to go outside. It just needs to be a slow growing strain of bird. They're not then grown with handbrake on. If you've got a very good house and good conditions, and you're able to grow that bird, if somebody else takes 56 days and you take 50, yeah, your bird will be, you'll end up doing better. So it's not like it's been grown with a handbrake on. The renewable heat incentive, yeah, and it's a reason to think that that things will get better if more people avail of that. And TAMS grants for improving their houses. These grants are generous. If you can invest and improve your house, definitely there is the incentives to do it. And because at the end of the day, chickens, it is a good business. Margins do high. Chickens, it is after the swine flu there epidemic last year. Chickens is now the most popular global meat. If these lower stocking densities come to pass, which they will, I think every house that's capable of growing a chicken will be in high demand. So if anyone has a house that's really struggling, I would encourage those people just to stay at it, because it's all those houses will be very valuable, I think, in time. But there are potential challenges. We don't use much antibiotics. We don't need to use much antibiotics in chickens. The litter is generally good, but if there is need for antibiotics, we'll treat. But in some countries, there is no antibiotic ever policy. I wouldn't agree. As a vet, I couldn't condone that. I think I'll always need to be able to treat birds if they need to be treated. But there is less and less antibiotics in use in poultry. Really, if somebody is having to routinely treat with antibiotics just to keep things acceptable, that guy won't be allowed to stay in business with any of the integrators for very long. All the integrators are trying to keep their antibiotic usage low. They'll never stop you using them in a specific chickens for very long. So you do need to up. You need to improve your house. There's a lot of the chickens in the USA and Norway anyway. They're just not using. They're still using some processors in the USA, but roughly half don't. In Norway, they're not used at all. And that's a big challenge. It means you need to have a good vaccination policies. The vaccines are good, but you do lose some of the potential benefits on a in altering the microbiome and retain longer throughout if you have vaccines. If vaccination is your control policy, reduce listeriosis. And the vaccines that you can control cocci very well, but they don't control dysbacterial. They don't help to mitigate dysbacteriosis and necrotic enteritis. In my opinion, the best place for vaccine is the summertime, and to go back to during the winter. Definitely the vaccines have a place, but I wouldn't like to be relying on them routinely, and they're not. Yeah, there's a lot of podo levels. There are challenges, but all these challenges the industry will cope with. It's a strong, vibrant industry, and being able to surmount these challenges. So I think that's that for a few questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Conor. Brilliant presentation. Not just on podo, but on animal welfare in general. And I suppose the challenges that we are going to be faced with as we go into the future. So, just in terms of the slower growing chickens, I suppose, what sort of stocking densities do you think we're going to be looking at if we're at 39 kilos per metre squared now? How much do you see that reducing to?
Well, under the European chicken commitment, it's 30. So it doesn't go as low as a free range bird. And and you don't have to keep them as long as a free range bird. So it mightn't. It might. If you were to go all free range, you'd need a lot more houses than this. But yeah, 30 is the answer. And they're not. They don't need access to the outdoors. The free range label will still be a higher welfare label. So in Holland, the minimum, there's different levels of welfare. Anyway, the 30 kilos is the basic, it's the lowest level, and then it goes 1 star, 2 star. 1 star is free range. I think 2 stars organic, and I think I forget what they call a 3 star. But yeah, 30 will be. I do think that'll be the standard.
Perfect. And I suppose just I'm conscious of the time, so I just ask you one other question. The installation of windows has been something that's been seen on farms around Ireland. Not a regulation or legislation yet, but do you see that being brought in as a regulation that we have to install windows in boiler houses?
I don't see it. It's not going to be. It'll never be legislation. But as I said, it's the retailers or customer demand. At the moment, the retailer customer demand for the welfare requirements for a lot of the retailers greatly exceeds the legislation. So I don't think these windows will ever be a requirement of legislation. But yeah, if the retailers or the customers want them, they will happen. Are they a good idea? I see more issues with windows than without windows. I see more pecking, and they say birds. You can have high light intensity, but when you've got these shafts of light and areas of increased light over the rest of the house, I think I see a lot of abnormal behaviours and pecking and scratching at each other. So I'm not really for them, but look, it's definitely it's what a lot of the consumers want. Under the chicken commitment to 2025, you'll have to grow birds to 50 lux. Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of what's in the I do think a lot of what's in the chicken commitment 2025 will improve the welfare of the birds, but I don't think having 50 lux will improve the welfare as such. It might facilitate more normal behaviours and in perching and all these other things, but like really, I think that one clause in it might cause more problems than it.
Yeah, they'll just maybe do a bit more harm than good with the shafts of light coming through. Just conscious of time, we've run slightly over time, so thanks a million, Conor, for joining us. I think you've really highlighted that although there might be challenges in terms of foot pad dermatitis or slower growing birds and different topics coming forward, as an industry, we've crossed challenges before, reducing our levels from 70% down to 40%, and beyond that further, we can do that. So thanks a million, Conor. Thanks a million to Louise Clark in the background there for the support. And thank you to all of you for joining. And I hope to see you all next time when we're joined by Carla Gomez talking about biosecurity audits. So thank you and bye-bye.